"You'd look so much better if you lost just a few pounds." Those words echoed in Clara's mind long after dinner was over. It wasn't the first time her husband, Marcelo, had made a comment like that, but this time, it stuck. There was something in his tone, cold, calculated, as if she were an object he could shape to his taste. Clara wasn't overweight. She was healthy, active, and confident in her own skin. At least she had been. But over the months, Marcelo's constant remarks began to chip away at her self-esteem. "Just a little lipo here," he'd say. "You'd be perfect if you fix that." Each comment felt like a scratch on a polished surface, slowly dulling her shine. She tried to brush it off, focused on her son, on her job, on the home they had built together. But Marcelo's obsession with her appearance only grew. He started leaving brochures of aesthetic clinics around the house, following fitness influencers and casually showing her their bodies. "This is the standard now," he'd murmur. "It's not just about looks, it's about health." Clara knew better. She was a biologist. She understood the human body more than Marcelo ever could. But even with all her knowledge, even with all her reason, the emotional manipulation started to work. Doubt creeped in. After months of subtle and not-so-subtle pressure, she gave in, not because she wanted to, but because she feared losing the man who had once looked at her with admiration, not criticism. She scheduled a consultation, then a surgery, liposuction, a minor abdominal procedure. Nothing too invasive, she told herself, but inside, it felt like she was cutting away a part of her identity. The day of the surgery, she was quiet. Marcelo seemed satisfied, almost smug. "You're going to look incredible," he said, kissing her forehead before she was wheeled into the operating room. It wasn't affection. It was ownership. Recovery was painful physically and emotionally. Clara stared at herself in the mirror for days, wondering if the changes would ever be worth the inner discomfort. Marcelo, on the other hand, acted like everything was finally how it should be. He paraded her at gatherings, showed her off on social media, always reminding her how much better she looked now. But behind closed doors, his demands didn't stop. They intensified. Now that she looked perfect, he expected perfection in everything: the house, the meals, her behavior, her availability, and all while juggling work and caring for their little boy. Clara was tired, but the worst was yet to come. Clara began noticing how Marcelo would criticize even the smallest things. If the towels weren't folded just right, if dinner wasn't hot enough, if she didn't respond to his texts within minutes. Nothing was ever enough. She found herself constantly anxious, her once calm mornings now clouded by nervous anticipation of what would displease him that day. The surgery hadn't improved her life. It had made her feel trapped in a new, shinier version of the same cage. One afternoon, while organizing the bedroom closet, Clara found a receipt for an expensive necklace she'd never seen before. Her stomach sank. She tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a gift for their anniversary. But deep down, suspicion began to bloom. Marcelo brushed it off when she asked, "You're overthinking." It was for a client. Business stuff. His tone was sharp, defensive. Clara didn't push further, but her trust was already cracking. Weeks passed. Marcelo grew colder, more distant. He often came home late, claiming meetings, events, last-minute work emergencies. And Clara, now fully aware of how much she had changed herself to please him, began to feel resentment. The turning point came one evening, when their 5-year-old son, Lucas, sat beside her on the couch and innocently said, "Mommy, why was Daddy kissing the lady with the red hair at the cafe?" Clara's heart stopped. She stared at her son, trying to stay calm. "When did you see that, baby?" "Yesterday, after school. I saw him through the window." He hugged her too, like really close. The weight of it all came crashing down. Clara didn't cry. She didn't yell. Instead, she felt a cold clarity take over her body, the kind that comes when a storm has finally confirmed what the winds had been whispering for so long. She knew Marcelo had betrayed her, and now it was time to choose herself again. That same night, Clara stayed up in silence. She watched Lucas sleep, his tiny chest rising and falling peacefully. She felt a surge of protectiveness that strengthened her decision. She would not raise her son in a home where love was measured in control and betrayal. She quietly pulled her old suitcase from under the bed, the same one she hadn't used since before becoming a mother. Methodically, she began packing. A few clothes, documents, Lucas's favorite toys. She wasn't sure how long she'd be gone, or if she'd ever come back, but she knew she had to leave. She called her cousin Helena, a medical researcher with whom she had always been close. Helena lived in a nearby city and had always admired Clara's intelligence and resilience. When Clara explained the situation, Helena didn't hesitate. "Come, my home is yours. No questions asked." At dawn, Clara left a short note on the kitchen table. "I deserve more. We deserve more. Don't look for us." Then, with Lucas in her arms and her suitcase rolling behind her, she walked away from the house that had once held dreams, but now only echoed disappointment. Marcelo didn't take it well. Hours later, her phone exploded with calls and messages. At first, he demanded explanations. Then he pleaded. Then he threatened. Clara blocked him. For the first time in years, her mind felt light. The weight of judgment, expectation, and false affection had been lifted. And even though fear lingered, a seed of freedom had been planted. Helena welcomed them with warmth and no judgment. Lucas adapted quickly, feeling safe and loved. Clara, however, took longer. She spent days in silence, processing, mourning the love she thought she had, healing from the emotional wounds hidden beneath a perfect surface. But soon, she remembered who she was, a woman with a degree in biology, a sharp mind, and a compassionate heart. She hadn't lost herself. Marcelo had simply tried to bury her light, and now she was ready to shine again. Helena's apartment became a haven of healing. Clara started helping with small things around the house, gradually regaining a sense of routine. The emotional bruises were still there, but with every sunrise, she felt a little stronger. One morning, while having coffee at the kitchen counter, Helena looked at Clara and said, "You know, the lab is hiring. We need someone who understands molecular biology and can lead a small diagnostics team. You'd be perfect." Clara hesitated. It had been years since she'd worked in a lab setting. Marcelo had pressured her to take on more household responsibilities, convincing her that her career could wait. But that version of her life was gone. She nodded. "I want it." The first day at the lab was a mix of nerves and excitement. The sterile smell, the hum of machines, the white coats, it all felt familiar and empowering. Clara threw herself into the role, and within weeks it was clear to everyone she was more than capable. She was a leader. Marcelo, however, hadn't let go. From fake legal threats to sending friends and family to pressure her into returning, he tried everything, but Clara remained untouched. Each attempt only fueled her determination to build a new life. Lucas thrived. He smiled more, slept better, and began asking thoughtful questions about science and nature. Curiosity that Clara nurtured lovingly. They were rebuilding together. As months passed, her professional confidence soared. She initiated projects, reorganized lab workflows, and proposed new methods that saved time and resources. Her colleagues respected her. Her superiors noticed her. For the first time in years, she felt seen for who she truly was. One day, during a team meeting, the lab director pulled her aside. "Clara, I want you to lead the next research division. It's a big step, but you've proven yourself. What do you say?" She looked around the lab, the place that had given her back her voice, her purpose, and smiled. "I'm ready." Clara stepped into her new role with both humility and strength. Leading a research division wasn't just about managing data. It meant mentoring younger scientists, solving complex challenges, and speaking with authority in a room full of brilliant minds. And she did it all with grace. Every morning she arrived early, reviewing protocols, answering emails, and setting a tone of collaboration for the day. Her team grew to admire not just her expertise, but her calm, thoughtful leadership. Outside the lab, Clara kept a quiet life. She and Lucas spent weekends at parks, museums, or building science experiments at home. She watched him grow more curious and independent each day, and saw in him the reflection of the freedom they had both reclaimed. Marcelo, however, wasn't done. News of her promotion had reached him, and with it came a new wave of bitterness. He posted cryptic messages online, tried to paint himself as the victim to mutual acquaintances, even spread lies about her abandoning the family. Clara no longer reacted. What once would have broken her now barely scratched the surface. She had no more energy to waste on someone who couldn't celebrate her growth. Still, one message got under her skin. It was from one of Marcelo's old friends who wrote, "He says you only made it because of your body now, that the surgery made you marketable." Clara paused. She took a deep breath, and then responded simply, "No, I made it because I'm brilliant, and because I finally stopped shrinking myself for a man who couldn't handle my light." That night, she lay in bed with Lucas curled up beside her and felt peace, not just because Marcelo's words had lost their sting, but because she had found her own. In the weeks that followed, Clara was invited to speak at a national conference on women in science. She hesitated at first, unsure if she wanted to share her personal story, but then she remembered how far she had come and how many women might still be shrinking in silence. She said yes. The conference hall was packed. Hundreds of faces from across the country, scientists, students, professionals, sat waiting for the next speaker. Clara stood backstage, holding her notes, heart racing. Her topic was scientific innovation, but she had chosen to begin with something more personal. When her name was called, the applause was warm, encouraging. She stepped onto the stage, adjusted the mic, and looked out into the sea of faces. Then she began. She spoke not just about her research, but about the journey that had brought her there. about the pressure to change for someone else, about rediscovering her strength, her voice, and her purpose. The room grew silent, attentive, deeply moved. I thought changing my body would fix things, but the real change happened when I reclaimed my mind, my time, and my worth, she said. Science gave me a way forward, but it was courage that brought me back. The applause was thunderous. Afterward, people lined up to thank her, some with tears in their eyes. Young women especially told her how much they needed to hear her story. That moment shifted something in Clara. She realized her story wasn't just hers. It was a beacon. And if she could use it to help others, then everything she endured had purpose. She returned to the lab with renewed energy. Inspired, she launched a mentorship program for young women in STEM, offering guidance, encouragement, and resources. The program quickly gained attention from universities and nonprofits. Her story was featured in a national science journal. Offers for interviews, collaborations, and speaking engagements began to pour in, but Clara remained grounded. Her priority was still her team, her research, and her son. Marcelo tried again, this time with a public statement claiming he had supported her success all along, but no one believed him anymore. Clara didn't even blink. She had built something stronger than revenge. She had built legacy. Months passed, and Clara's life settled into a new rhythm, one she had built entirely on her own terms. Mornings began with Lucas smiling at breakfast. Evenings ended with books and quiet laughter. In between, her days were filled with purpose. The mentorship program she created had grown rapidly. Dozens of young women wrote to her each week, some seeking guidance, others simply thanking her for showing what was possible after pain. Clara responded to as many as she could, each message reinforcing the importance of her journey. One afternoon, as she wrapped up a lecture at a university, a young student approached her. "How did you not lose faith in people?" the girl asked, eyes wide with both curiosity and fear. Clara paused, then smiled. "Because I learned to stop placing all my faith in others and started putting it in myself." It wasn't just a response, it was a truth she had earned. Her self-worth no longer hinged on anyone's approval, least of all a man who had once tried to reshape her into someone she was not. Marcelo, meanwhile, had become increasingly irrelevant. Word had spread about the real story. His efforts to tarnish Clara's name had backfired, leaving him more isolated and bitter. But Clara didn't celebrate his downfall. She didn't even think about it much anymore. Instead, she began dreaming bigger. She started working on a new research initiative, one that combined genetics and women's health. Her idea was bold, her approach innovative, and her conviction unshakable. She also started writing a book, half memoir, half science. She titled Unwritten Codes: The Biology of Becoming. The chapters poured out of her like breath long held in. She spoke of science, of healing, of the power in reclaiming your body and your narrative. Helena remained her biggest supporter, watching with pride as Clara bloomed beyond what anyone could have imagined. Even Lucas, now older, sensed the transformation. "You smile more now," he said one night before bed. "You look happy." Clara kissed his forehead. "That's because I am, and you're part of the reason." The months that followed were some of the most productive of Clara's life. Her book took form quickly, becoming a fusion of scientific insights and deeply personal reflections. Each chapter was a mirror of her journey, from self-doubt to self-knowledge, from control to freedom. She submitted the manuscript to a well-known publishing house, expecting a long wait. But within 3 weeks she received a call. "We love it," the editor said. "It's bold, raw, and incredibly needed. We want to publish it." The announcement of her upcoming book sparked new attention. Clara was invited to interviews, panels, podcasts, but she remained focused. For her, it wasn't about fame. It was about voice, hers, and those of other women who had felt silenced for too long. Meanwhile, Marcelo made one last desperate move. He filed for full custody of Lucas, claiming Clara's growing public image and busy schedule made her an unfit mother. The accusation was outrageous and painful. Clara fought back. Her lawyer presented evidence of a stable home, strong maternal care, and Lucas's own words about his happiness. The judge ruled in her favor without hesitation. That ruling was a turning point. Marcelo's grip had officially broken. He no longer had power over her, not legally, not emotionally, not in any way. When her book was released, Unwritten Codes quickly climbed bestseller lists. Readers, especially women, flooded her inbox with letters of gratitude. Some saw themselves in her story. Others found courage in her words. At the official launch event, Clara took the stage once more. This time there was no fear, no doubt, just purpose. "We are not the sum of what others expect us to be," she said. We are who we decide to become. Lucas sat in the front row, clapping proudly. Helena beside him, beaming, and Clara stood taller than ever, not because of the surgery Marcelo had once pushed her into, but because she had rebuilt her life from the inside out. In the weeks after the book launch, Clara received an offer that made her pause. A leading research institution in Europe invited her to head an international project focused on women's health innovation. It was the kind of opportunity that could redefine her entire field and her own life. She spoke with Helena and Lucas about it over dinner. "It's a big change," she said. "We'd be moving, different country, different language, but I believe in what this project stands for, and I think we'd be happy there." Lucas smiled. "As long as we're together, I don't care where we go." Helena, ever the supporter, added, "Clara, you've earned every bit of this. Go where your light can shine even brighter." With that, Clara accepted the offer. Months later, she and Lucas moved into a small but beautiful home near the research center. Life was simpler, but full of purpose. Clara led a team of brilliant scientists from around the world, all focused on creating tools and treatments for women who had long been overlooked by the system. Her work was fulfilling. But more than that, she was living a life fully her own. No one told her how to look. No one demanded her silence. No one clipped her wings. Occasionally, news of Marcelo would still trickle in. He'd changed jobs, moved cities, tried dating public figures. But Clara had no interest in the past. She no longer needed closure, revenge, or validation. She had something far greater: peace. And in that peace, she bloomed. Years passed. Clara became a renowned figure in scientific and feminist communities. Her book remained a staple in university discussions. Her mentorship program had grown into a nonprofit supporting thousands of women worldwide. Lucas, now a teenager, thrived in school and often introduced his mother to his friends as the smartest person I know. Their bond had only grown stronger through the years. One evening, while preparing dinner together, Lucas looked up and asked, "Mom, do you think everything that happened was meant to be?" Clara paused, thoughtful. "I don't think the pain was meant to happen, but I think what we chose to do with it, that's what made it meaningful." She had turned her trauma into purpose, her silence into leadership, her fear into freedom. She had built a life not despite what she had endured, but in defiance of it. In her final keynote as director of the lab, she spoke to a room filled with students, scientists, and leaders. "You are not here to become perfect. You are here to become powerful. Don't shrink to fit love. Grow to become yourself." The applause was long and loud. Clara stepped down from the stage, eyes glistening, not with sadness, but with the fullness of a life reclaimed. If you've made it this far, thank you. If Clara's journey moved you in any way, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us tell more powerful stories like this.